Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow breathing in your blood. It's never enough. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Uh-oh, Spill's in first thing.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour.
On time, too.
That's right, yes, on time. Hey, thanks for being here, Spill. Thanks for being in the chat. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim and Dustin as we go down the table, and we're joined by our good friend of the show, Aaron Armageddon from the Armageddon Hour podcast. And Aaron was actually the first drummer in my band Corned Beef and the Pillbillies. So Aaron and I actually go back a long way through the Johnson City music scene. I think we met about 9 years ago, and been friends ever since, and I was glad to have his perspective here. He was just hanging out, and I said, hey, you know a lot about this shit. Why don't you join us on the show tonight? And he was happy to oblige.
This will be one of the most, I would say this will be one of the episodes, I would say this is unique, but it's not. I normally do this where I'm pretty much here only for distraction, because this is one of the conspiracies that I know about just because everybody seems to be into it, but I never was into it, so I don't know that much about it, so I'll be a listener on this one.
Okay. Well, you always had an interesting perspective, especially if there's something that you've never heard before. And you could kind of, be a bit of an analog for some of the audience. Probably most of the audience knows all this stuff, and they're just here to shoot the shit with us about it, kind of like we all are. But you could be an interesting analog for somebody who's maybe never heard some of this stuff before. And because you're going to be like, what the hell? Seriously? But I don't know that we're going to go so deep into it. I'm kind of going to look into the new revelations that so recently came out. There was a trove of documents released. I think it was like 11,000, but they still didn't release all those pesky documents.
There's a 7-minute long Bob Dylan song.
It's dogs.
Oh, no, I thought
It's either the G-men or the dogs coming down the stairs.
he mentioned the Bob Dylan song. That was the one thing
Yep.
we couldn't say anything about.
I think that's what it is. They're on to us, man. And who knew that one of those 5 live viewers was our federal agent? But, I guess it had to be somebody. And we talked...
Use a view, damn it.
That's right. All right. Well, but
We're not going to judge you because you're a Fed. You're still a fan.
we're going to go a bit into the history of intelligence in the United States, and we're going to kind of go into the history of the Kennedy assassination. And there's a lot of different reasons people have thought of why that may have happened, and a lot of people have been involved. Different groups have been involved or been accused of being involved. And we've got some new evidence that came out. Well, there was a Tucker Carlson show that came out on Friday night that purported to have spoken with someone who had evidence that the CIA was involved in one way or another. They didn't say specifically how. But I imagine we'll find more as people have time to look over these 11,000 pages, or it's like 5 million pages. It's like 11,000 documents that are like 5 million pages that came out, I think, Thursday. So it's going to take people time to look over those, but they still didn't let out all of them, and that's going to be a big part of what we talk about tonight. So, Aaron, you sounded like you're pretty familiar, or at least passing familiar with some of the ideas for the conspiracy regarding JFK. What was the one that kind of stands out to you as probably the one that either gets the most traction or you would think is the most likely?
There's so many different ones. You can talk to all kinds of different people of all different ages, and they've all heard this or that or different things. And I've talked to people that thought he got hit from the storm drain. And
I've never heard that one.
well, the main thing is you got to think who would want to do this and start there. Obviously his enemies. But as we were watching earlier, the slow motion video, you can watch the guy in front of JFK get hit, and then you can see it pass through JFK, and he's hit. It looks like around the neck, I guess. I can't remember exactly where. And then the other one hits him, and that's it. But Jackie freezes up. It's got to be horrible. She just freaks out and starts trying to crawl up. I guess Secret Service trying to help her, but I've worked in security for like a long time, and that's the Secret Service, and just the whole movement of the way that their response and how it was just so sloppy. It's like me and you were talking about earlier, like if I was running, if I was brass, with the Secret Service in that situation, he wouldn't be exposed like that to begin with.
That's not how you move a VIP in any circumstances.
No, he was wide open.
Let's look at this video Aaron's talking about real quick. The slow motion Zapruder film. And you can see right here, Governor Connolly winces and turns around, and Kennedy's already been leaning forward in pain. Jackie's checking on him. And then we're not going to show, whoops. I was going to try not to show that part because we're on YouTube, and that'll get us.
Big pixel though, so maybe you won't get it in there.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, it obviously left these people's video up, but you never know. They sometimes will pull you down or whatever. But yeah, you could see it looked like that it happened from the front to me, because it looks like Connolly gets hit right here, and then Kennedy gets hit in the neck, and then he gets hit again in the head. And if you've seen Oliver Stone's film JFK, they go over in the part in the courtroom where Jim Garrison goes over and over again, the part where he says back and to the left, back, and he shows how his head goes back and to the left because he's hit from the front of the right. Well, Lee Harvey Oswald, who took the blame for the assassination, was in the book depository, which was behind Kennedy and to his right. Now, Aaron, you said you'd visited that.
Yeah, it's a museum now. It was really cool. And you can actually go to the window, and they've got the replica of the rifle and everything, and the angle and stuff. It was really cool. There was this older gentleman there, he had this cool outfit on, and he was selling these magazines about it. I got my dad one of them, and if I knew we were doing this, would have borrowed it from him, showed it to you. But it was pretty cool. He had a good little side gig going with the magazines, and it was an interesting magazine too. But there was a lot of tourism based around it there and stuff.
It reminds me of that King of the Hill episode where Dale goes down to the grassy knoll and he's like, he reads the Warren Commission report, and he saw that it was the direction the motorcade was backwards from the way he thought. So he starts deciding that the Kennedy assassination actually makes sense. So he goes to Dealey Plaza to try to find one of the Kennedy conspiracy guys there to change his mind and help him not have his worldview destroyed. And he goes down there, and there's a guy like, Kennedy wasn't killed in '63. He ducked out the false bottom of the limo and went down to Mexico, where he got in on the ground floor of a Pollo Loco franchise. And then there are a whole bunch of other crazy conspiracy theories that don't make any sense. But there really are people out there that are saying stuff like that, and I can't help but wonder: are those the intelligence equivalent of, say, like COINTELPRO that the FBI did, where they would plant people to make protest groups look violent or to make them look like they were ignorant? And so the people that you see representing protest groups on TV, that whether they're committing violent acts or whether they're being interviewed on television to make that, and they make that group look stupid, the FBI ran an active program called COINTELPRO to do just that. And, I can't think the CIA didn't have something similar, especially since they had Operation Mockingbird going on, where they were implanting and embedding their people in the American press so that they were able to control what news was disseminated to the American public, especially when it was controlled by a small number of corporations. But Aaron, did you see, when you were down there, what did you think about, did they have it marked to where you'd know where the car was when you're looking out from the book depository? Do you think it's a shot that was feasible for somebody to make on Kennedy, or?
I think did Oswald have military training?
He did, yeah. He was I think he was a expert grade marksman, which is not the best, but
he also defected to Russia for a while and trained over there.
He did, and that's why a lot of people say that he was
connection to the intelligence committee right there.
Yeah, he didn't actually defect to Russia. He was working for the FBI.
He had a girlfriend over there.
Yeah, he was working for the FBI, but it seems like they were trying to cover up whether or not he was actually a part of the CIA. And Aaron and I were talking earlier, and we thought about of all the different people who actually wanted him dead, Oswald did say on video that he was a patsy. And it's like, what if Oswald was the guy actually trying to stop this thing from happening? And maybe that's why he was in the book depository with a rifle, if that's indeed true.
Batman.
And he maybe had an eye on the guys over on the grassy knoll, but there were, according to some people, there were gunshots coming from everywhere, and there are some people that say that there is evidence of, like Aaron said, guys who had escaped down a storm drain, guys who were over a bridge that he was about to pass under up ahead of him, and that seems like a more likely place that the shots would have come from. And then there was like an open manhole cover, and there was other evidence that led people to believe that there were people over there, and the eyewitness accounts that they said it wasn't just 3 gunshots, it was gunshots everywhere. It's chaotic, and everybody was running. And if you'll notice on some of the Zapruder footage, there are some people who let's see if we can find it here. See, this guy's diving, this guy's covering his kids, but other people are just kind of standing there. Let's go back. Oh, I didn't show that.
And then there's something about that woman on the grassy knoll.
A lot of that video doesn't even make sense. Like, why wouldn't she get in the floorboard?
Yeah.
If she's worried about her protection, why wouldn't she get in the floorboard?
That's what I'm saying, logistically.
Like she's trying to get out of the car, like the threat is in the car.
Yeah, some people have said that the driver did it. I don't find that likely, because in order to have that kind of firepower, I'm not going to show the photos on here, but what was done to Kennedy's head could only have been done by something like a 357 Magnum or 44
What if it was
Magnum,
like some kind of
high
like?
velocity handgun.
What if it was like? I know this sounds stupid, but you can find patents where the CIA. Keep in mind these are cowboys with a lot of money. Could they have not just rigged up some kind of get smart bazooka device in the back of that car that would have just blown his head off?
That's
And
possible.
she's like, "Holy shit! The seat just shot my husband's head off," and she tries to get out of the car. I'm just here for the.
No, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, they definitely
makes more
had
sense
they
to me.
definitely had a lot of technology that wasn't publicly available then. And we found out about the heart attack gun. I think we actually found out about that in the church commission or the church committee.
I mean, hell, a bazooka, well, not even a bazooka, just a magnum in the back of a car seat. It's not even high technology.
Yeah, well, something hit Connolly too. That's where they had the magic bullet theory that they tried to say that this bullet went around and took these turns and went all around through different ways.
Potter bullet.
Something that's very interesting about the bullet that killed Kennedy is it was found laying almost fully intact on his stretcher when they brought him into the hospital. And here's a picture of this bullet. It's been fired. You can see the rifling on it.
For the rest of the show, it will now be referred to as the Bullet Patronus.
That's the magic bullet right there that was supposedly bounced around and
Looks completely unfazed, doesn't it?
bounced off a bunch of bones and went through Kennedy
I don't know
and went
anything
through Connolly.
I'm the least gun-educated person on this show right now. And I can tell you that bullet looks like it was fired into some
He was
ballistics
shot at
gel.
Connell 2 times, right?
Kennedy was shot in the throat and in the head, and Connolly was hit one time.
That's the thing that makes me think it was intelligence community, because it's like they had a backup plan. The first one didn't hit him in the head; it hit him near the neck.
Yeah.
Jackie looks, and the same one that went through the guy in the front also, the magic bullet.
Mhm.
But it's like immediately as soon as they realized that first shot didn't work, that one got him in the head, and that was it.
And the people, skeptics, back when this bullet came out from the Warren Commission, which the Warren Commission was a whole different story. It was members of the Warren Commission included Allen Dulles, who was fired by Kennedy as head of the CIA right before he was killed. I think it was like the summer before. Dulles had started up the Bay of Pigs fiasco and tried to roll forward with that without Kennedy's approval. And we're getting into that a little bit early, so I do want to take a break and let's get back to the history of the American intelligence, so we can get a bit of an idea about what we're talking about here when we talk about why the CIA might have been involved or why people think they might have been involved. So we're going to go back here. This is off the government website, but it's from IRP.org, so I'm not actually using the government website to read it here. So it's an offline version of the document that was on the government's website. But it starts off by saying the function of intelligence as an activity of the U.S. government is often regarded as a product of the Cold War. Indeed, much of what is known today as the intelligence community was created and developed during the Cold War period. Let's look real quick at what is the intelligence community. The United States intelligence community, according to Wikipedia, is a group of separate U.S. government intelligence office agencies and subordinate organizations that work both separately and collectively to conduct intelligence activities which support the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States. They include military intelligence agencies, and civilian intelligence and analysis offices within federal executive departments. And it's overseen by the Director of National Intelligence. So this was actually created and established in 1981 by Ronald Reagan. Now you remember, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, whenever it was, I said Reagan was a pussy. I should have clarified a little bit of that, because Reagan's administration did a lot of awful things, but Reagan got shot while he was
He
president.
got shot twice, didn't he?
I don't know how many times he was hit. He was in one shooting.
He had 2 separate assassination attempts.
Well, one of them was when the balloon popped in the auditorium, and he famously said, "Hey, you missed me." But I think that Reagan, he talked a good game when he was running for president, and he talked a good game when he was governor of California, and did a lot of good things for the people of California. But he basically had a deal to gain support from, certain powers that be within the Republican Party, that he would let George H.W. Bush be his vice president. So George H.W. Bush was actually the director of Central Intelligence during the Carter administration. So he was director of Central Intelligence, and then he became vice president. So there may have been a lot going on behind Reagan, where his hand was probably forced in a lot of different ways, and when he resisted it, they showed him who was in charge, and then he went along with it and did a lot of the things like, the Iran-Contra, and they say, they never did tie that directly to him, but it happened under him.
Or they killed him.
Yeah, they replaced him with a clone.
With a clone.
Yeah.
Well, no, the clone I'm out on. I'm not with the clone theory anymore because of the tumor situation I wasn't familiar with when you were talking about Dolly the lamb.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know she died of, unless that's just propaganda too, and they've been making clones of everybody.
I guess it could be. It could be like the island.
Yeah, maybe. So, see, like for context for the people on the camera there, I spend so much time when it comes to conspiracies looking at whether or not we live in a giant crater or whether or not there's a giant diamond dome that covers the entire world that I don't ever look at stuff that actually could happen. Like bullets.
Well, you remember William Colby, the director of the CIA, who talked about how they had 400 journalists in newsrooms or 400 people in newsrooms in the 1978, and he was the one who famously showed the heart attack gun. Let's watch William Colby, and this is.
Is this real?
No, this is a real hearing. This is in let's see, the Church Committee.
What year is this?
This is actually, I don't think this is Church Committee. Let's see, which one is this? Because Church Committee was in 1970. I'll go to the U.S. Capitol and look.
Cookies
Page
committee.
not found. No, I don't want your cookies, U.S. Capitol. Help fix the broken link. I bet you'd like that.
I got a cookie waiting on me at home.
Um,
One single cookie. It's a Food City cookie, but it's a good cookie, believe it or not.
but yeah, the William Colby, he was critical of the Church Committee, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
Walmart cookie.
What kind of
Yeah.
cookies?
Pretty good.
Some macadamia in there.
I
So-
could go for a nut.
So yeah, it was Church Committee. Sorry. So anyway, let's watch this video real quick of William Colby at the Church Committee.
God, look at that haircut.
That's a
Spock. Some character from Star Trek.
So that when it's fired, it's fired silently. Almost silently. That's very little. What range does it have? 100 meters, I believe, about 100 yards, 100 meters. About 100 meters going on. And the dart itself, when it struck.
Well, he goes on to say that the dart has a frozen shellfish toxin that induces a heart attack that's indetectable to.
So it launches a barb that then melts.
Yeah, well, it's needle of. It's like a frozen needle of shellfish toxin. But yeah,
And alongside 1911, with looks like a shitty Tasco,
yeah,
like 3 power on top of it, somehow tackled to the top of it.
yeah.
When you think heart attack gun, that does make sense that they could do that. But I was thinking like Logan's Run, but like invisible, and it hits them, they go,
Yeah.
like Death Note style.
Well, remember this was 1975 too. So
Well, I'm still impressed in 1975 that they figured out that they could give somebody a heart attack by launching like a needle.
Oh, just think about this. They
fish poison out.
released it in 1975 that they had it available to them.
Dude, if you think about it, that's like native blowgun, like that's
Yeah.
the same kind of technology. They just put it inside of a pistol.
Yeah.
Put it in alongside 1911.
I think a lot of this stuff is actually pretty obvious stuff to come up with when you dedicate all your time to how to kill other people.
Yeah, and that's actually what we're going to get into, because in the early years of American intelligence was used during wartime to, General George Washington was famous for it. They even made a show on, I think it was not, what network was AMC? It was called Turn, and it was about Washington's spies. And, Benedict Arnold was famously one who betrayed him, but they had all kinds of intelligence games going back and forth, trying to figure out what the British were doing, trying to give the British bad information so that they would act on it. That was one of the things General Washington was actually good at, was tricking the British into sending people where they didn't need to be going so that he could achieve other objectives. And then they famously came over Christmas Eve, came over the Potomac River and attacked the Brits in their sleep there, in the famous picture of Washington crossing the Delaware. So he was no stranger to using intelligence and spycraft. But the difference in it is that once
Attacking when they got their pants down on Christmas.
yeah,
It's a pretty low move.
hey, you know what? The the founders, the guys who were the rebellion at the time, they were taking on the mightiest empire in the world, and they had to have every advantage they could get. And
I
if
agree.
you ever seen Mel Gibson's The Patriot, they said the same thing. That was based on history. Of course, Mel Gibson wasn't really there, but when they had the American colonists do it, yeah, that's true. Mel could have been there. Yeah, they had the American colonists who were using guerrilla warfare that they had learned partly from their time in the Indian Wars. They, the British were like, this is dirty, low down stuff. You're not lining up in the field for us to shoot you. You're hiding in the trees. So they said this, of course, said the same thing about that. And you make the case that, it's kind of a dirty trick to do it on Christmas Eve, but, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's against the rules of warfare, but when you're fighting a force that's that superior to you numerically and militarily and materially, you got to do what you got to do or you're going to get killed.
It's not that I don't agree. It's just, I don't even know how many episodes back we were praising the idea that I think it was on Christmas. I think it was like the Germans all got together and had like a friendly game of football or something like that. Like,
well, remember we talked. There's no evidence that they actually played football, but yeah, the Christmas truce of World War I. The Germans, the English, they stopped fighting. They stopped fighting for the day.
The Germans, the English, so it's just the damned Americans that'll kill you on Christmas.
Yeah. Well, they ended up killing each other on Christmas, but they did take a break for a little while Christmas Eve and exchange gifts and cigarettes and sing songs with one another. There is a picture of people playing football that's often represented as the Brits and Germans playing football with one another during the Christmas truce, but that picture is actually from a Dutch military camp, so it was not at the Christmas truce.
That sounds like the most shadiest game ever. Like,
What if it was like jaunty? Like, well, let's just have a drink and then...
Well, they may have kicked a football around. There's no way to really know about that.
Well, more than likely they sat around and sang and got drunk together.
Yeah. That's mostly what we say. They traded cigarettes. They looked at pictures of home and talked to one another when they could.
They
And
just look at their watch like, all right, guys, you got to go back over there.
yeah, well, that's pretty much what happened. And the next morning, the word got back to command that they had stopped fighting for a full night and that they had refused to fight the next day. And command was like, you get these fuckers shooting at each other again, or we'll get somebody in here that will, and we'll hang you. So the commanders, the captains and on down, they made sure that they shot after that, and they were also told to make sure nothing like that ever happened again, and it didn't.
There was that one guy that got too drunk and had to like crash out.
It crashed in the wrong trench.
Yeah, look up. He's like, look at the flag. He's like, oh.
That's Lucas. Lucas, you're out there. Luke of Earl. If you're watching tonight, that's you. You'd wake up in the opposing side's trench.
You wake up and then, or it's just like you just pretend it's like I look close enough to them, like them, and
Just
be
steal
like,
someone's
just be,
uniform, put it
just,
on.
yeah, be very, very quiet. Just
I just imagine it happened to like a German. Him wake up and look around, just be a bunch of people shooting that direction. Him being like, no. It's like immediately start stripping.
Well, like I said,
or it
they
also could be, that really showed you that they were the ones they didn't want to be there. No one in World War One that was in besides like your aristocratic generals and all that stuff. No one wanted to be there.
Yeah, the people who were gaining glory were the only ones. Glory and money and power were the only people who wanted to be there. The soldiers who had participated in the truce, yeah, you're right. That was the main thing. Nobody wanted to be there.
Especially after the beginning of it, because everyone was like, all high and mighty at the beginning. Then they got out there and saw combat.
Yeah.
Like, this is shit.
Oh yeah,
They didn't have a Hitler.
and everybody thought, due to war propaganda, everybody thought that it's just like Starship Troopers. When they go to the first time they go to fight the bugs, they all have the idea that they're just going to roll over them and it's going to be an easy victory.
Very first thing, they all get ripped apart.
Yeah, and that's kind of like how all the different that's kind of how all the different sides experienced World War One. They all thought they were rolling in for an easy victory, and then there was no easy victories anywhere. And it's like also Starship Troopers. They used waves of human beings armed, crushing each other. Tried to overwhelm the enemy with the sheer number of human beings that they could. Try to just overwhelm them with numbers, and with new technology such as light machine guns and different faster firing weaponry, and you get into the trench and you've got pump action shotguns. I mean, you got a lot of dead guys when they tried that approach. And then they ended up even getting worse, going to gas attacks and things like that.
Flamethrowers.
Yeah.
Psychic dudes.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Afraid!
Well, there's not that's not that much of a reach from what the kind of the intelligence communities use. They've used remote viewing and what they thought were psychics to try to get the secrets from the enemy. They've tried harming people through astral plane states. They've done experiments for all this stuff, and some of it supposedly worked. But if you watch Stranger Things and you see what they put 11 through, the government really did that to people. Whether or not they could actually, explode things with their mind or whatever, or actually go through, to see what, actually remote view like that, I don't know. But they definitely did a lot of work on it.
They also just would give large doses of psychedelics to people and then watch them to the people.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that was the early years in it. We talked about
Safe distance.
we talked about paperclip a couple weeks ago, and the scientists that were involved. That's why it was called MK Ultra, mind control, because the German control, and it was a continuation of the German mind control program. And I think that's pretty interesting that a mind control specialist who contracted with the CIA, it was a Dr. Was it Leland West? He went to he went to see Jack Ruby and determined him to be insane after he had killed Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, all the other psychiatrists and other people who had evaluated Ruby found him to be sane, but then this guy who just comes in, who just happens to work for the CIA, is called in to evaluate him, and he just determines that he's insane, and he's also connected to the MK Ultra program. So
Got a couple chats.
Oh yeah, I haven't looked at the chats here in a minute, man. Sorry, we got into Kennedy. It's easy. Hello, Toxic Kilb. What's up, Wilbur? Good to see you, brother. We need to get you back into the studio for another little talk here. We got
What's up, Wilbur?
we got Sean in the chat. What's up, man? He says, when I get very upset, light bulbs around me blow out with a pop. Yeah, dude. I have some weird electromagnetic things that happen to me too. Like I'll walk up to computers and they will just go haywire and stop working. Whenever, especially at cash registers and stuff, and I'll say it's probably me. I'm probably standing too close to it, and then they'll laugh and they'll say, "That's funny, but it's been fine all day till you stood up here. I mean, it was literally just fine." And then my sister and I both have a thing where we kill watches.
I was about to say that. I do the same thing.
I used to kill watches really, really fast. This last watch I've had, I've not killed the battery on it, but I've noticed if I wear it, it will slow down time. It'll slow down on it really fast, but if I just leave it sitting,
She's about to claim that she's like an Avenger or something. Give me a second, guys.
Just let me use my magic watch. No, but it'll run slower when I'm wearing it than if I don't wear it. Our bodies run on electricity. Yeah, we're electromagnetic, electrochemical organisms. And I had I don't try to claim credit for this. Yeah, watcher, don't keep time on me. Yeah, Spill says she has the same issue. But me and my brothers and sisters, we were walking home one night, and this was like in I can't remember if it was 93 or 96. It was one of the years we had a huge snowstorm here in Elizabethton. And 98, because might have been 98.
98 were the two.
It might have been 98. Well, we were walking home. Yeah, because my sister was older. It would have had been 98. So we were walking back home from Elizabethton, and we'd been sledding, and there was probably like 3 feet of snow on the ground. The snow was still falling. It was piling up on the transformers. But like, as soon as we started walking under transformers, and yeah, they were under piles of snow, but it would happen right as we walked under them. They would boom and just explode 10 times as loud as a gunshot and throw sparks everywhere. It was scary as hell, dude. And it just kept happening to us. Every time we'd walk under one, it would happen. And so after about 3 of them, we started trying to avoid them. And a few more still blew up, but it was like always right as we walked by them. It was the weirdest thing. Like they'd had the snow piled on them for how long, and they didn't blow till we walked by them. Your eyes change color when you're upset. Yeah, me too, Spill. Mine will be from gray to green to blue.
My butthole puckers when I'm scared.
I've seen it.
Got a toilet cam.
Oh.
That's fine.
Well, let's go back to the early years of the Republic. In
monetize it.
one of the letters to his officers written in 1777, Washington wrote that secrecy was key to the success of intelligence activities. He said, the necessity of procuring good intelligence is apparent and need not be further urged. All that remains for me to add is that you keep the whole matter as secret as possible, for upon secrecy, success depends in the most enterprises of the kind, and for want of it, they are generally defeated, however well planned. So that just, I mean, honestly, that seems like common sense in warfare. You don't want your bad guys to know what you're doing. You want to know what they're doing, and if you don't have that, it's going to be hard to win the war. Yeah, it's definitely necessary. But as we're going to go on to the next stage of it, up until we're going to go to 1882 when the Office of Naval Intelligence was created. Now, this was the first permanent intelligence body for the U.S. government. So, went over 100 years after the Revolution without an intelligence. And really, I mean, they had the War of 1812, which was one of the reasons one of the things they used to call for it, because in the War of 1812, the British were able to get like 16 miles away from the White House before they actually knew they were there because of intelligence failures. Because they were looking at it from the standpoint of they would never try to do that, and then next thing you know, they're there. And then
just a bunch of British guys running as fast as they could.
Yeah. And then the Canadians burned the White House down. So that's a little known fact. It was Canadians that were working with the British in the War of 1812. Of course, they were
Buddy, pal.
Yeah.
I think we should
You ain't my friend, guy.
And now we're being invaded again with damn Jordan Peterson and Stephen Crowder and who else is left? Ben Shapiro, he's Canadian too, isn't he?
Is he? I have no
I
idea.
think he's from New York.
New York, same
California,
thing.
no, he's from California.
I think he's from California. Yeah.
That's a bunch of Canadians though.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another one. I know there's more.
Shania Twain.
Gavin McGinnis.
Shania Twain got us in the early 90s, you know, all this local
I guess I'm
folk-
speaking more for politics now, because isn't that weird that so many people involved in politics or in American politics are actually Canadian.
I think Crowder is one of the most notable ones, because you think
Crowder
about how
and Gavin McGinnis
the
are both
influence
notable.
that,
It's just he got canceled.
yeah, well, you think about the influence that Crowder has on American, you know, conservatives.
Well, think about the influence Jordan Peterson has on psychology. Think about the influence that Gavin McGinnis created the Proud Boys, and he's Canadian. So
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, we wouldn't have Proud Boys without Canada. Canada might be the devil. Maybe we're just looking in the wrong spot.
Blame Canada.
I think they're
Remember
right.
South Park?
South Park might be right.
With all their hockey hullabaloo and that bitch Anne Murray too.
Let's not forget that shady Keith Urban from Australia.
Oh yeah.
Changing his accent.
All the Five Eyes, all these crown colonies are out to get us, and that's one of the things that a lot of people say that the CIA actually represents is, you know, because they share information with the Five Eyes countries, and that's one of the ways they get away with spying on us is they will see we have laws that it's illegal for the CIA to operate in America, but they do anyway. We also have laws that it's illegal for intelligence operations, which we talked about the intelligence community. It's actually 17 different intelligence agencies that work together under the Director of National
I think
Intelligence.
it changed under the Patriot Act. Now they can CIA.
Yeah. Oh, they're not supposed to legally, but they're supposed to. They're allowed to
that bullying class to just do what they want. They just look at them and just shove your head into a locker.
Who's going to stop them?
Yeah, well, the CIA is technically not allowed to, but they are allowed now to share information since the Patriot Act with the FBI, because they said, oh, that was one of the failures of 9/11 is because the FBI wasn't able to share what they found with the CIA, but the FBI didn't do anything about it either, even though they knew that the guys were training to fly airplanes but not land them. They had, you know, all kinds of different giveaways on it, but that's a whole another story there. We may revisit that a little bit in the episode, because I got a lot I want to get into tonight, particularly regarding JFK, but I also want to look at how basically in 1882, that's when we had an official intelligence agency that stayed on, right? Because except for the War of 1812 and some other minor conflicts, we didn't really have a lot of warfare in the century after the founding of the country. But, you know, in 1895, we get into the Spanish-American War, and it's been pretty much every 20 years since then, we've had a major war. I mean, you go from there from the Spanish-American War, you go to World War I, and that starts, you know, they finally finished it in 1918, and then 20 years later, World War II starts in 1938, and then as soon as that's over, you know, within 5 years, the Korean conflict starts, and then we get right into the Vietnam War. So pretty much as long as we've had intelligence agencies operating in peacetime, there's not been much peacetime, because they're always out there looking for, and even if you say it was for a good thing at first that they were looking to stop, being invaded or being attacked, they get out there and they start doing things to, kind of these false flag operations and other things to try to influence and disinform and misinform the other side, and they get us into all kinds of trouble. But as we go on to World War I's over, then they formed at first they formed the Information Office for the Army in 1885, and then in 1918 that became the Military Intelligence Division. And then with World War II, they grew the Cipher Bureau. This is where they started intercepting signals because people were sending telegrams and radio signals. So
Yeah, World War II, they were still having to have linemen that had to run the line out for communication,
Yeah.
That's a wild thing about
in World War One, they were
Yeah,
sending.
Pony Express.
World War One, we had tanks and we had machine guns and we had carrier pigeons that were delivering messages to the front lines, and people would try to shoot down the enemy's carrier pigeons. So you definitely came a long way, and you could see the value of an intelligence operation spiking the enemy's carrier pigeon. If you could intercept it and change the message, so that way you know what they're thinking, and then you can send the message along, but change it in a way that it screws up their plan. I mean, makes sense in wartime.
Imagine the stand somewhere waiting on a pigeon to land so you can get a message like,
Imagine how many birds got killed for no reason. Just
Yeah.
oh no, there goes.
Everything's falling over, folks.
Packet full of Mentos.
Sometimes when I'm sitting alone, or almost always when I'm sitting alone, as I suspect everyone in this room has the same experience since they live in the same area that I do. You may in your neck of the woods too. You're sitting there just doing your thing, vibing like a viber does, and all of a sudden you feel like something's watching you. And you look over, you look up, you look down, oh bam, there it is. There's a stink bug and it's looking right at you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever just think maybe those things are nano cameraed or something? Because why are they always looking at you?
That's an
There's always a
interesting
damn
question.
stink bug looking at you.
And they do look like a robot. They look like a little armored miniature
They don't
battle
have any
tank.
purpose. They don't eat. There's plenty of like house plants they could be nibbling on it, and they
Oh,
don't. They
and
they
guess
fly
what?
into the living room and just
Weren't-
sit there and look at you.
Weren't they brought in by China?
Oh, I think the U.S. government dropped them to deal with
Or
like,
brought in from China?
deal with like an aphid problem or something.
Yeah.
We've always had stink bugs, but they weren't these.
No, we
particular
have-
ones. They were like a green.
Yeah,
like
we
a
used to have
vibrant
green ones.
color.
Now we have brown
still see
marmoted
those, but
stink
there's-
bugs. They're very rare.
There's like 10 to 1. 10 to 1 brown ones now.
Mountain lions are moving into the Smokies. Have moved in there.
Well, I'm gonna go hunt me a damn mountain lion then. Life goal will be achieved.
That's one of the few things that I'm truly like terrified of.
A mountain lion?
Oh yeah, dude, your house cat would eat you if it was big enough.
Oh, I believe that.
But a mountain lion is big enough, so guess what?
You just go for the eyes.
They always go for the throat. That's what's so scary about them. That's why I don't mess with them. They make
Gentle.
horrible sounds too, like these just like high pitched like. No. Nope.
Well, this says that they were probably brought over in a shipping container. The stink
Brown.
bugs.
So
Stink
I thought
bugs.
they were dumped intentionally because I remember
did too.
they do dump stuff intentionally. So.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, there's all kinds of instances of the Department of the Interior bringing in outside species and then having them take over. I think you're maybe thinking of the Asian lady beetle,
I think I am
which
too.
ladybug is
Ladybug,
bright
ladybird,
red.
yeah.
The ladybug is bright red and has just a few spots, and then the Asian lady beetles are orange and they're invasive. And I think they were brought over to deal with mites or aphids of some sort, and then they
And they
basically.
do. But
Yeah, they basically moved the ladybug or the lady beetle or the ladybug out of its.
but there's another one too that looks just like that ladybug too that has a different amount of spots and it'll straight up eat your bean plant. So you can see the difference because one of them's wings don't fold up all the way and it has smaller spots, but otherwise they look identical. But they'll lay eggs on it and then bam, there are all kinds of little squishy, nasty things all over your bean leaves.
That's right.
Fuckers.
It's like you used to have to check your bananas for tarantulas because they come from South America,
Yeah, you spoke in produce. Yeah.
Yeah.
I found a couple of them. And
Well, I would.
I actually found a spider at work on the bananas a couple weeks ago. It was actually just a wolf spider, but
I remember back when I think I was like 19, I was working at a Winn-Dixie that's defunct now. And
everyone Dixie's. I grew up beside one.
the one up here, well, there's two of them.
West Market.
Well, this is over in Elizabethton. I was unloading the truck and I literally unloaded, got it set down, and I got a phone call. It was all frantic. And they informed me that I was to not open any of the grape pallets, that they were very infested with black widows. To which we were like, okay, ha. So they told us, don't even open them. was like all frazzled. So me and Daryl, the manager, were just like, all right, that sounds awful. But they were sending the check back to him, get all of them. And we just thought it was like a gag. We're like, there's no way. That's just like probably ran over a nest. There's like one somewhere in there. They just can't risk it. Dude, there were so many. Like we got the top case open, and it was green grapes and these little black. There was at least one in every bag. I was like, holy shit.
A lot of black widows.
And they won't die in the cold, folks. I hate to tell you, they come back.
Oh no, they don't die.
I've seen it.
They're tough. Well, let's get back on track here to the. We're talking about the intelligence community, how it evolved over the years, and eventually in 1941, you formed the Office of Strategic Services, and that's what would eventually become the CIA. It was like the prototype for the CIA, but that's part of who they were part of the War Department, and they actually the people involved in the OSS were the ones who started the CIA and brought over the Nazis in Project Paperclip that we talked about. And then they started the National Security Act in 1947, and that was when the NSA, the National Security Agency, became established. So we had all these different, military intelligence, CIA, NSA at the time. And Aaron and I were talking earlier today. Isn't that funny that right after that happened, after they brought over the paperclip scientists, after they established the CIA, that was when the incident happened at Roswell where the spacecraft was found. And then we started seeing, after that, all kinds of instances right after the Roswell instance of, aliens and spacecraft. And that hadn't been a real thing as far as...
How many years was it? Because I know what was Roswell?
Roswell was 47.
47.
And then, remember we talked...
That's 2 years.
Yeah, well, that's when the OSS stopped, and then National Security Agency started in 49, or in 47. But they had already brought over. Let's see, when was Paperclip? Let's look this up real quick.
I know they brought in 35,000 Nazis.
Yeah, a lot of things say like 1,000, but it says 1,600, but it's actually more than that if you get in everybody that was taken. And when did it start?
Wikipedia is not for sale.
Between 45 and 59, so right as soon as the war was over, the OSS started this on their way out the door, and right, what do you know, that's when it led to the CIA. And they also let's see what we got here. We found, I think it's 46 that
Sometimes when Cliff's staring at the screen pretending to look for information, he just has like comic.
Okay, no, it was 47. That's when I have my end times.
He's on eBay right now looking at reel-to-reel recorders for some reason.
No, 47, it was the National Security Act, which made the National Security Agency. It also made the Central Intelligence Agency.
He seems to be very interested in the lawsuit edition of the Ibanez Les Pauls, too.
I am. But the 47 is when the CIA...
Is that what they really are, or is that what they say?
What?
Is that what they say that were incepted, or
Well, I'm sure they were already operating to a degree, grown out, and they were.
That's just when they had that official name.
Yeah, because it was the OSS. It was the former. And it was in January of 46, so pretty much right after the end of World War II, and the former clandestine units from the OSS were gathered in the Central Intelligence Group. And then that would later become the Central Intelligence Agency when they made the National Security Act. So they've codified it in the law.
Look how sus this line is.
Yeah,
Makes me not trust Bono, too.
Yeah, listen to this
fake
here.
Plastic Submarine Band.
Oh, no, you can't just... Dude, Bono's friends with Soros. It's a fact. Like, George Soros hangs out with Bono, and they're, like, really good friends.
I'm not surprised.
That doesn't surprise me.
Bono,
Like that terrible music.
Bono has that one song.
Every praise and worship leader in the world, for some reason, loves him. So maybe you can take him down.
It's about Bono.
Bono has that song One, and then he calls his charity One. Well, it turns out his charity actually only gives 1% of the money it makes to the recipients of
The
it.
irony never
I just
escapes
get
him.
shady vibes from him.
Yeah.
Well, I got shady vibes from when I was a kid, and like my parents would.
And they forced their album on everyone that had
Oh,
Windows.
the Apple.
Oh,
yeah. People are pretty pissed about that one.
Automatically on your device when you bought it. Like,
And he couldn't delete it.
I got shady vibes from him because when I was a kid, I remember they had a concert on somewhere, and I remember he came out, and he had, he was out there doing the, and he's out there doing this like kind of Jesus thing. He
he's got
goes,
too much kabuki theater going on.
I remember when I was a young man, my father had a beautiful voice, and it looked like he was sitting at this door, and he goes, and he gave it to me. Look, and he just started singing. I was like, what the hell was that? I didn't have, I was a kid at the time. I didn't know what narcissism was when I was a kid, but I knew he had it. I was like, what the fuck was that? My dad had a beautiful voice, and he gave it to me and started singing.
What Tim was pointing out on the screen here.
It's very uncool Kenny Powell.
It's very uncool.
He showed in here the agency started working with photography, and they basically mapped out the whole world, taking photographs of it and on. But then he says the need for development of machine spies obliged the director of Central Intelligence to conduct certain research programs such as the U-2, SR-71, and Corona development directly out of his own office. And
let's say SR-71 was an alright band.
Yeah, they were okay.
yeah, I went and saw them at Rafters
Yeah, they were
in like 19 or 2000 probably.
That's a throwback for sure.
Yeah, I just, and Unwritten Law was okay. I don't know why they just popped into my head.
Yeah.
So follow.
Okay, so back we go on to World War II. President Eisenhower or after World War II, he creates the National Reconnaissance Office because, and this thing was a secret until 1992, but there was multiple satellite intelligence mechanisms that he wanted to basically oversee with this, because the CIA and the Air Force were fighting with him. So the CIA was like at odds with the military right then. But one of the things that a lot of people say that really is what got Kennedy killed, and we'll get into this will be a discussion part here. So we set up how they've expanded the intelligence agencies on into the early 1960s, and one of the things that the intelligence agencies wanted to do was they had the Cold War going on. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they were trying to overthrow Castro because they were talking about the spread of communism around the world. Now we see this video, this speech, a lot of times about Kennedy, and the people say, well, this is why he was killed, and they show this video and this speech, and I want to play it real quick, and we'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll also maybe talk about a little missing context. Oh no, Spill, are your eyes changing color? I hope not. She said, oh no. But watch this video with us real quick. One of y'all make sure we can hear it too, please.
In a free and open society. And we are, as a people,
inherently and
historically. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Either DS or not.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Does that word right there bother? Well, I guess those series of words together bother anyone else? Word porn. Because doesn't it imply that everybody got out of that speech listening to dead JFK talk about freedom? Shouldn't we all have Woodies right now with that being word porn?
Well, you got all the different varieties of non-pornography porn where they show pictures of like abandoned buildings, and they call it abandoned porn. And
they shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
porn implies erections. And if that's what you're into,
building, they are erect.
And here we are, all flaccid. Hopefully,
if that's what you're into, I mean, I guess that's what you could call it. But I'm just saying, don't put that burden on me to leave that beautiful picture of a sky or whatever, or a bird flying through the jungle, and be like nature porn.
Yeah. Well, let's
With it. I think it's
I
funny
like
actually.
sky porn.
let's go.
You do, don't you? Actually, you're the one. Did you make that?
I don't know. I may have.
You may have made
I
it.
don't know.
I'll allow you that.
No,
one.
there's
But I'm also
like
gonna-
a space porn and stuff on Reddit. There's,
Well, I'm
there's
also,
whatever porn on Reddit.
Well, I'm also. I think it'd be funny if like Golf was like really attracted to the sky. Like if he just sat there and looked at it, was like, "Baby, me and you one of these days."
He's actually a really good photographer, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The scintillating lens, everybody.
Well, he scintillates when he's looking at the sky.
That's right. That's why he says the scintillating
He's taking
lens.
pictures of all those bands up there going, "Man, I wish this was the moon. Wish this ceiling wasn't here."
He's pretending the spotlights are the stars.
Yeah. Have you ever done because I know you got some pretty good cameras. You ever tried to get you a good cratered moonshot?
I don't have enough zoom.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a lens that's heavy enough on the zoom.
Well, life goals then.
Yeah, those are the ones I want. Are really expensive though. Like
Like actually expensive. No,
like
not grand.
oh,
Or you could use a telescope with your DSLR. You could probably get you a decent telescope cheaper than you should get a good lens
Is
for your
there
camera.
an
the
attachment
fact
to
I
let
could
you?
get a lens. I could use it for more than just
True.
that.
Well, let's get into this video here real quick. One of the things that I noticed he says at the end, I want to play back for you here, because a lot of people have used this to, suggest, and certainly the people who made this video did, that he was calling out the New World Order and that he was exposing the forces that killed him. I want to listen to a couple of things right here that he says, and give you a little context for this video, or for this
I am
speech.
asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
So one of the things, what he says is he's asking their help. So who's he talking to? He's actually talking to a group of reporters, and he's explaining to them that this grand conspiracy that he's talking about is actually communism, and that we're in a Cold War right now, and we don't need you reporters reporting negatively on the activities of the United States, because this is bad for for morale, and we also don't need you leaking secrets that may help our adversaries in the Cold War. So, it sounds like he's talking about the secret oaths and like this. He says we're against the secret oaths, and he's basically starting this by saying, now we all know that it's bad for us to keep secrets, and then he finishes by saying, but because of the threat we're facing, I'm going to have to ask you to keep some secrets, even though it's your job to inform the American public. Mm-hmm. But then Aaron and I were talking earlier. Do you think maybe he did get wind of what was happening? And because this was 7 days before he was actually killed. Mm-hmm. Do you think he tried to leave an encoded message in this speech that he gave to the press? Because when you play it back now, it really sounds like...
I don't know if you know this.
Tell me.
This is step one for QAnon.
What is?
This speech, there was a secret message that he left inside of this speech. And then there was a fake part where, I don't know if this is fake or not, because the fact that Cliff didn't know this obviously proves that this is not a group of QAnoners. That gets thrown around a lot, like that's like generic for anybody who disagrees with Democrats now. You're a QAnoner.
And I actually did follow those posts, fairly regularly, because I thought they were interesting. And
well, if you even thought they were interesting, then you're a threat to democracy.
Right.
You're a QAnoner. No, they thought that JFK essentially faked his death because they thought that they were going to kill him, and so the reason the auto death scene looks so weird is because he was involved in it, and that he's been secretly behind the scenes this whole time, and his
okay.
son faked his death too.
now that's the one I heard
allegedly.
about, that they said that his son faked his death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's two different versions of it. Some people think his son wants revenge for his father's murder, and some people think it's all a big family plot to keep faking their deaths or whatever and get out of politics to go against the other people, because the Kennedys are like old money with like alcohol and crap, whereas like money comes from different places,
The Kennedys were tied. Well, JFK's dad had him deep in stuff before, he would become president. And then he had to start dealing with internal enemies, in the intelligence community and the other party and this and that, his own party. But his father had beef with the mafia. That's a fact.
Okay.
The Kennedys were definitely tied to the mafia.
Which makes sense with the alcohol money.
Yeah, Joe Kennedy was running alcohol. For those that don't know, during Prohibition, he became very wealthy and very influential in American politics.
There's a lot of people that wanted to kill that would have a reason to want to kill Kennedy.
Plus, he was a damned Catholic.
Yeah. Well, that's
Which
why.
was really funny because
yeah.
I remember my granddad explaining to me that really was the sentiment back then. That
Yeah.
people were like really upset that he was Catholic, and it was like that's funny in modern times.
Yeah.
But I guess up until that point, it was all Protestant presidents.
Kennedy's dad was kind of greasy. JFK, his dad was.
You know why
Christian.
Kennedy's had to
Kinda
die?
shuddered and said,
Wow.
let me put it to this.
To bring in you couldn't have the punk band without that happening.
It was all just escorting that one movement to punk music.
Let's see what Roger Stone says when he was asked why Kennedy.
He really
Because
died at the altar of punk.
Roger Stone worked for Nixon, right? He was a political operative that helped get Nixon in the White House. Let's look at what he said. What Nixon said when Roger Stone asked him who killed Kennedy.
President Richard Nixon, this conversation in which he had a couple cocktails, and I asked him point blank, who killed John F. Kennedy? Kind of shuddered and said, let me put it to this way. Lyndon and I both wanted to be president. The difference was I wasn't willing to kill for it.
Wow. So Roger Stone claims that Lyndon,
The LBJ.
that Nixon insinuated that LBJ had him killed, and that would really make a lot of sense if you think about the Bush connection. You think about where the Bushes were operating. Now the Bushes are big money, old money from New England, also like the Kennedys. But the Bushes are actually from Connecticut,
Did
and
they have a precursor to oil, or was it always oil?
well, they went into oil in I think the 1940s. Prescott Bush was a senator from Texas, and George H.W. Bush supposedly flew a fighter plane in World War II and got shot down in his plane, the Barbara, and then went back and picked up another one and came back and went and fought again. But there's a lot of people talking about that George H.W. Bush was involved with this. George H.W. Bush, if we go to, and we're not going to have time to read it all tonight, unfortunately, but this is a part of a series on whowhatwhy.org politics. And if you search for it, this is part 3 of 10 of the JFK hit and where was George W. Bush. And you can see how long this article is. So if you really want to get even close to the full picture, you really got to read all 10 parts. But I want to hit some key parts here.
Would it be part of the Bushy Knoll?
Yes.
Did we do Neil deGrasse Noel Tyson? Did we do that on the AI thing?
Bones are just hard meat? No, we didn't. We didn't do Neil deGrasse Noel. Let's try that.
Neil deGrasse Noel Tyson.
Let's see. Stablediffusion.fr. Find this here.
Sean, while you look it up, that says he sounds like JFK was talking about now.
Yeah, it does. That's why some people were saying that, because if you take the context of it and what he was talking to the reporters about, he was, he was talking about communism, and he was asking them to keep some things silent. You might miss the context of it where he's actually talking about the banks from inside the U.S. government. You could say the same things about all of them. And Aaron and I talked about earlier, you could converse for an hour on what he meant by that it relies primarily on covet means.
Well, what does he mean?
Well, let's
What
discuss it.
covet means? Well, I'm asking you there, Mr.
Well, I mean, if you take the surface level meaning of if you imagine that he's talking about to the reporters about communism, then you could say that
negative prompt, too. Sorry, that's
that's a whole nother thing. We'll do
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. No red colors.
Yeah. Kind of. But yeah, let's skip that for now.
This is a tech talk show. We
No, it's
can't
not.
skip it.
No, it's not, because I don't have time to explain it and example it. Let's go. But he talked about how. I know you made me lose my train of thought. That's Neil deGrasse Noel Tyson.
It's just him. Or alternate versions of him that look sad. It looks like all the different Neil deGrasse Tysons of all the different realities, but the ones that weren't ever famous.
And his brother, the gay underwear model right here.
Is that a real one?
No.
Oh, okay, I was like, that's real. I was like, please tell me that's real.
You know, he's kind of a dick. Can I say that?
Yeah, he comes across that way.
No, I mean, he has this like arrogance, and he'll just like whenever he's doing a podcast, he'll like yell at the people. He's like, ah.
And you just got to come in and ruin everything. Like, there's no way Santa Claus has time to visit all the houses in the world. It's physically impossible.
Well, that's why there's naughty kids.
Yeah.
You can skip them.
Yeah.
I remember, I watch a lot. I can't help it. I watch a lot of behind the scenes internet drama, I guess is what you'd be called. There's all kinds of people that just skewer him and they even like track him and watch him as he changes his behavior. There's like right here we know he got negative press for this JRE episode, so you can see how weird his behavior is in this one, and they tack it to another interview he did over here, and it's like following like his likability as it just keeps tanking. Because I mean the truth of it was he was a physicist that decided to be an entertainer, but I think he did let it get to his head a little bit too much.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about Poppy Bush, right? And that's what the family called.
There's supposedly a photo of him on site, like overseeing what appears to be the day JFK got shot.
Yeah, we're going to look at that. We don't know for sure, but it definitely does look like a young George H.W. Bush. And the strangest thing about it is, you ask anybody from that age, like, I'll tell you, like our age, y'all know where you were when you saw 9/11, right? Like I remember very clearly what was going on when I turned on. I was in my apartment and I was having the cable hooked up. I just moved in, and when he hooked the cable up and turned the TV on, the one plane had been hit, and then right when he turned it on, the second plane hit, and like,
take this back out of my house.
Yeah, I'll never forget where I was. I'll never forget who I was with, and people who were alive in the '60s, even when they were like 5 years old, felt that way when they found out that Kennedy was killed. When they heard the news, and on multiple occasions, George H.W. Bush has said that he either does not remember where he was or that he was somewhere in Texas. And here's the photo Aaron is talking about. Let me blow this up so you can see it.
Remember where he was. It would be pretty unbelievable because, like you said, 9/11. I remember I woke up really late because I'd recently taken a third shift job, and I wasn't really sure what I was looking at on the TV when I woke up.
I was at school.
This is, who people say is likely George H.W. Bush. And then here's a picture of George H.W. Bush at that age. So that could definitely be that person. And he's right there at the school book depository where Oswald supposedly fired the shot that killed Kennedy from. And, there's different levels of... Go ahead, Dustin.
I was like, and also just supposedly, on the firearm topic, it's like, why did they supposedly use for the magic rifle be a Carcano?
Why?
I was like, why?
Oh.
It's like, you're using something that was not very widely.
That's an Italian
If you wanted to
right?
make it make more sense in America, you would have had something shooting
something more common.
An American caliber. 6.5 Carcano, is that Italian or?
I know the French used it for a while.
Let's look up 6.45 Carcano.
Damn French. I'm just playing. I've got a little bit of French in me so I can shit talk them. That's how race works.
Let's see. Origin.
Yeah, the mob were always trying to get to Kennedy too.
Yeah, it's Italian 6.5, used in the Carcano 1891 rifle and many of its successors. I think he used the Mannlicher rifle, allegedly. Mannlicher Carcano.
That's a good name.
Yeah, and this was a bolt-action rifle with iron sights, and I wonder, let's look up how far was the shot.
I'll tell you one thing I do firmly believe about it is I think the same people that killed Oswald killed Jack. Like, not physically, but they had it done.
Yeah.
Both of those people were killed.
Well, it is interesting that a CIA scientist or CIA psychiatrist went and determined...
you can't talk in court if you're dead?
No, you can't.
You can't go in there hollering, talking about, like, maybe what really happened. That's a theory now. You can't have him in there talking about that. That would blow it wide open.
Okay, 265 feet. That doesn't really 265 feet's not that far.
No, it doesn't seem that far. I don't shoot guns.
It's
That
the
doesn't seem
angle
that
too,
far.
and it was windy that day, and the car using a moving vehicle. You got once you factor all that in
Yeah.
too.
That makes it not an easy shot, but
Yeah. But
It's-
if he was a trained sniper in the military, then yeah, he possibly could have. He can factor in all that wind and.
he wasn't he wasn't the best marksman. I think he was like, I forget how the levels are determined, but a lot of people use like I think it says like maybe expert marksman or something, which is like the middle grade, or it's a lot of people apparently qualifies that, whatever it is. So a lot of people say, well, he could easily made it because he was an expert marksman. And again, I'm not right sure if that's the right term, but whatever it is, he qualified like in the middle of the pack as far as in the Army.
He didn't,
Yeah, so
But also, if he did that in the American Army, you wouldn't have been shooting a Carcano.
no. But he also probably would have been a good shot anyway. Most
He went
people
to
were
Russia
most people
afterwards. Is that
were
where
a
he
good
would've got
shot
it?
back then, especially if you went into the military.
Where's the car
I think he
come
was
from?
a spook, is what they call it. Somebody that's
They use them in like Italy and France.
Okay, so
He's had documented
Well, that's
connections
yours,
to
so
the
that's where we got it at.
FBI and the Russians though, and a lot of people say he was working for the CIA the whole time.
like the guy in the Vegas shooting. I
yeah.
think that guy was it's the same kind of situation going on there.
Isn't it interesting that his name was Paddock, and he allegedly killed a bunch of people that were in a corral, like at the concert. They were basically in a paddock. And, you think about a guy like Bernie Madoff.
Made off
And
with
he
all
made
the
off the
money.
money. And then you
Made off
got
all
Sam Bankman-Fried, the Bankman-Fried, who did the FTX scandal just now.
I get so think like that all the time. I can't. That's why I always talk about temple. People
Yeah.
go to the temple to
The
get the
Temple,
truth.
Jimmy Dore, and like
When the trumpet sound.
Yeah.
Trumpet. I can't help but think like that.
and when you talk about Bill Gates, somebody told me that they were like, think about Ball Gates, like the demon ball, the demon king ball, and I was like, well, what about Build Gates? Because he builds gates into our homes with windows. All these names are pretty
Oh,
wild.
like Bill Clinton. It doesn't rhyme with anything, but dirty rapist pervert. Dude, that blows me away that guy that was doing those, because you said, I think it was you I was texting, maybe it was somebody else, said that, no, it was one of my friends was talking guitars. If it was you, it may have been. I don't know. I talk guitars with a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was this guy who does guitar pedal comparisons and stuff, and he really goes full nerdcore on it and really talks about if you want this one has the black screw and this one has the silver screw and all that. He really gets nerdy on it. And he's got such good information, and then every now and then he just says the most bananas crap, and he has to be serious because he's not got that kind of, he's just like, he was like talking about course pedals. He goes, course pedals, man, you got some great ones. But course pedals are great, but we all know the only great thing to come out of the 90s was Bill Clinton. I was like, what? How can you make this video in 2022 and mean that?
Clinton was a far better president than Biden. I'll say that at least.
Well, it's like comparing dog poop to a donut at this point.
Well, dude, Clinton actually, he was under a lot of pressure to do, to shrink the government, and he actually did in some ways, like, but it was with the so-called Republican Revolution, where they, and it was basically some semblance of a return to a more fiscally responsive policy, but it really wasn't. And he ended up doing a lot of things like selling ports to the Chinese and letting them start to invest in
Filthy
American
stuff.
companies. And he sold
Treason.
rocket tech and nuclear tech to China and North Korea. So, I mean, economically, you could say he did some good things, but and what I was saying earlier about Reagan too is, they shot him when he started trying to do actual good stuff, and he had George H.W. Bush behind him as his vice president, so it was a win-win for the intelligence community. Either Reagan is out of the way and George H.W. Bush becomes president, or they can, they've got him threatened now. He knows that if he crosses them, what they'll do to him, and he probably has read in and knows what happened to Kennedy at this point, so he probably just decided to play ball, and probably not risk his family and things like that.
He also spoke out against the industrial military complex in
Yeah.
that speech. And
New
the
chance.
Bush family are
Well-
big time game players in that game, as
Yeah.
well as the Cheneys. Cheney with Halliburton and all that, and just the conflict of interest there is just so outlandish. Like,
Anna says JFK and I have the same birthday. Anna, so glad to have you in the chat. Like having you in here. She says that she and JFK have the same birthday, and she remembers watching the funeral thinking he was so adorable. And she said her parents respected all presidents, but they didn't vote for JFK because he was Catholic.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have respected Biden either.
That's
Huh?
interesting.
She says she never met anybody except for her parents who didn't vote for Kennedy, and they were still very upset he was assassinated. Anna says she couldn't stand Reagan, and she laughed when he was shot, and my mom had a spaz at me.
Cold-blooded, son.
Yeah.
Laughed when he get shot.
Well,
Johnny Cash song. Something, you know? Cold-blooded.
I think my biggest beef with that guy saying Bill Clinton was the only great thing to come out of the 90s was not like I think there's a better president. or
Isn't it
anything.
like everything but Bill Clinton was pretty good?
That's I'm like, well, I guess my biggest beef was
Yeah.
he was referring to music, like, and he doesn't like grunge
Is it like saxophone music?
or whatever. Something, but I'm like, I started listening to like grunge lately, even though like I've listened to it before. But it's like grunge gets a bad name. There's actually a lot of really cool instrumentation in it. Like a lot of the guitar players are fantastic.
yeah, a lot of people they say, oh well, nobody could play guitars then because they did it a little bit understated compared to
Well, they think everybody's Kurt Cobain.
Well,
It's not every guitarist is Kurt Cobain.
But even Kurt Cobain was a good musician. He played some simple songs, but a lot of time a simple song is all that's needed. And part of that was, yeah, he wasn't doing the big old, tapping whammy bar.
He's being
wah.
compared to Eddie Van Halen and Nuno Bettencourt and people like that.
Yeah.
I think it's like a cultural shift, though, when you've reached the point where you're doing Michelangelo Badio, where you're playing 4 guitars at once. The next step down is for somebody to go back to storytelling and not do that.
And that's what the '90s did, and that's kind of what a lot of
He did have a lot of interesting structures with a lot of like free chord passages that didn't really follow any tonal.
Yeah. And then you got into
narratives.
stuff like Promise and stuff. Speaking of that,
Just saying. It was in reference to course pedals, and I just think it's pretty... There's a lot of good things that were in the 90s, dude.
Well, I don't think Bill Clinton was one of them. He famously in the '80s as the governor for Arkansas oversaw the shipment of drugs into Arkansas and was connected to the Bushes way back. So
Like dead kids were involved in that too? wasn't it?
oh, there was all kinds of stuff. Watch.
We don't need to be in the body count, fellas, just because I made a mistake. I didn't mean to start shit-talking the Clintons. I
What
had
was
a
that movie?
momentary lapse of judgment. I'm sorry.
What was that movie about Barry Seal? Oh, speaking of which, though, I meant to mention when we were talking about JFK Jr., there's a lot of people, because the QAnon people, there were people in that movement who said that JFK Jr. was still alive, and they actually pointed to a guy who showed up at Trump rallies who ended up being a guy named Vincent Fusca and said that was JFK Jr. and he was still alive. But it's important to note that JFK Jr. was running for Senate in New York. Hillary Clinton had recently moved to New York and was also running for Senate. Then JFK Jr., who was an experienced pilot, had a unexplained crash flying a plane and died. And then Hillary Clinton ended up winning the Senate seat, which JFK Jr. was a favorite to win. He was, polling well ahead of her. Of course, it was early on before the Senate race actually started. But you don't get in the way of a Bush or a Clinton if it's not doesn't work out well for a lot of the people who do. But back to Bush. Bush he started the Zapata Oil Company in the 1950s. And there are a lot of people who say he was actually working for the CIA because he was doing a lot. Zapata means shoe, I think, in Spanish.
It's also the military letter they attribute on Ocean's 12 to leading the revolution to get the dice changed over so they can get the strike to end in the factory so the production will continue.
Well, a lot of people say that because he was doing in the Caribbean
Ocean's
drilling.
13, sorry.
He was doing a lot 13.
Ocean's 13.
He was doing a lot of drilling in the Caribbean oil exploration. They say that he was probably working with the CIA and actually spying on the Cubans and stuff like this. And while in the backdrop of the assassination, you've also had, as we talked earlier, the Bay of Pigs invasion. If we didn't go into that, I know we have on previous episodes, but basically what it was is the CIA and the Army intelligence had cooked up a plan that they were going to get Castro out of Cuba. They had, plans for assassination attempts that failed, and they tried many times to do that. And, the communists were backing Castro. So he had basically, more or less unlimited resources because he had Soviet Russia, or, the communist Soviet Republic. They were backing him and giving him whatever he needed, including putting nuclear missiles there. And the CIA had plans to move him out of there. And what they wanted, one of the things they planned to do is they had an idea to have a group of anti-Castro Cubans that they would arm and support to basically storm the palaces, and they would have American air support. And they had all but told, or they had told the commies or the anti-Cubans, anti-Castro Cubans, that this support was coming, and they went on with the invasion. They went on with the raid, and then the air support didn't come. The anti-Castro Cubans got killed and captured, and the invasion failed. Well, these guys had already had plans to go in. They had mapped out Cuba, and they had pictures from satellites, and they were like picking out where their offices were going to be and things like this. These guys had it all planned out, and then Kennedy stuck a stick in the spokes. Well, another thing he did at the same time was one of the ways that the CIA was able to obtain the financing they needed was through the fiat currency, which had allowed them to basically steal the purchasing power of the United States people, and also let them do a bunch of black budget thing, because they could basically create money out of thin air. And he was going back to the silver certificates, where if you wanted to spend money, you actually had to have an amount of silver in the bank, and then they would give you a paper that represented that silver, kind of like a check. But you could not, there couldn't be money that existed without silver backing it. So a lot of people say that the CIA, which was funded, by the Carnegie Institutes and the Rockefeller Foundation, and that these were actually instruments. This Central Intelligence was actually instruments of the banks, and that was one of the reasons that he was killed. But either way, what's his name? George H.W. Bush was involved in here, and we've got a piece right here. This is revealing that George Bush of the CIA reported on activities of misguided Cubans. So we've got, I don't know if you can see this right here, but it's very faint when you blow it up like this. But it does say George Bush right here of the Central Intelligence Agencies. And that was later scrubbed, as I'll show you right here.
You're talking about HW, right?
Well, here's the thing. They went to search for George Bush in the CIA archives. This was in 1995, I think. Let me find this memo. And there was no mention other than a William George Bush in any of the CIA computers. And the reason this is significant is because George H.W. Bush had already been the head of the Central Intelligence Agency at the time. Yet there was no mention of his name anywhere in any of their files. The only one was this George William Bush. Let's see, let me find this right quick. So, DeuceMan5 on Twitter says this is an interesting document in the JFK files. It appears they scrubbed George Herbert Walker Bush from official records in 1997, 33 years later, after the assassination and right before his son became president. And this shows that they did a computer search, and they found the name George William Bush, who was already given a sworn affidavit that he was not the George Bush in question. And that included George Herbert Walker Bush in 1970, and there was nothing in there from him. And they're saying basically, we know he was in the CIA at some point because he was the director, so he should at least be in the files while he was the director, but he's not showing up for anything. And then they're asking the Warren Commission if they had, come across any of these things. Well, his name does come up. This is in the Warren Commission document, so this is one that definitely should come up. It's from November 19th, 1963, and so that was 3 days before the 3 days before the assassination, that George Bush of the CIA had reported by phone the activities of some misguided Cubans. And a lot of people think that the CIA Cubans, the people who were making deals with the CIA to have the CIA help them out in Cuba, may have been involved in the assassination. So there's a lot of people, like Aaron said, who actually wanted him dead. And what my thinking on it is, there's testimony from eyewitnesses that there was gunshots coming from everywhere, that there was gunmen on the grassy knoll, that there were supposedly on the bridge and the storm drains. What if it was just like the mob here, the CIA here, that everybody found out that this guy was going to be coming through town in an open car, and they all sent people to Dallas.
And like logistically,
Lucky number 11 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly
right?
like that. Yeah, lucky number 11. Yeah,
Is that the right one?
yeah.
You've got these huge skyscrapers, and there's just so many places for a sniper to get in there and do what they said he did. But logistically, all those buildings should have been swept by Secret Service, which I'm sure they were. They literally go through and weld the drains. You ain't even gonna get up underneath it.
Yeah, Aaron's in security, and
just the fact that logistically the placement of these guys and how the reaction of it was just like I said, I would have threw a fit. I would have resigned. I'd be like, if you're gonna let him drive down there in a convertible, he's the president of the free world. Like, it's the president of the United States. Like, why would you do that? And I know I read somewhere also that he wanted to do it. And he said, I'm just going to do it.
yeah, he did want to go out in public. And Elon Musk recently said that people asked him if he feared for his safety because he was turning up some of these documents that were showing that the FBI were communicating with Twitter to take down accounts, to influence elections, to basically do all these illegal things that we're not supposed to do in a democracy or a democratic republic or whatever you want to call it. In a free society, they shouldn't, and according to the Constitution, Bill of Rights, they should not be participating in this sort of activity. But there's now lots of evidence that they have. They've released some of it, but Musk has more on tap. And they asked him, do you fear for your life? And he said, well, let's just say I'm not going to be riding around in any open air car parades.
I have to believe that he set himself up now. I don't have to be right, but I choose to believe in this moment that if he said, put me inside this open car and parade me around, I have to think he faked his own death.
Look at this from the Babylon Bee.
That's a good point.
I didn't know you wanted it. You know what I'm saying?
Babylon,
I have to think he did it.
Babylon Bee says Elon Musk vows to reveal government and media collusion once he figures out where these red dots are coming from. That's from earlier this month. So it's funny, but at the same time, it's it's pretty daggone serious.
If I was still an end time conspiracy person, as I was raised to be, I would think that person would be the Antichrist. Somebody will shoot him, he'll survive, and he'll come back as the leader of the free world.
I was going to ask you if you thought about that.
I don't think there's an Antichrist.
No, but I'm just mean if you think he fits the criteria, because he does have to be wounded and everybody has to marvel, but he does great signs and wonders. He does a lot of the different things that that meets the criteria of the Antichrist. I don't think he probably comes from the same place. According to
he comes from the West, which he does.
According to some, Prince William meets a lot of the criteria for the Antichrist.
Prince William,
yeah.
The one with the crown, or the one with the former card girl from Deal or No Deal?
I don't know who that is.
It's not that I dislike Trump or anything. I'm trying to talk negatively about Donald Trump, but I'm just saying, Barron Trump, it would be a good candidate for Antichrist also.
Yeah.
He just kind of has that like.
But you've also got those crazy books.
Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle used to be on Deal or No Deal.
No, that's Harry.
Everybody hates the Trumps too much, man. They ragged us that for.
He had like 26 girls to pick from.
It's like Alex Jones said. He said that he said he got a phone call and someone told him his wife was like in the grocery department, like in the local store, and was like talking, like trying to intimidate him over something. I mean, they do that.
Do you think some of it might be because when you reach because modern day times are not at all similar to old like Hollywood stuff, like when somebody like Reagan got shot in the 80s or whatever, like you can be moderately famous and get like very tormented online, like a Wings of Redemption or a Dark Side Field or something. So I can only imagine how bad Alex Jones would get. He's way more famous and way more hated than a Christian, so I just wonder how many people are the people that just kind of have like TDS real bad, and they go after Alex Jones in their own personal free time because they feel like that's how they're going to save
you see
communism.
They're talking about, I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to get anything flagged, but this recent thing we've all went through that starts with a C, but he had the doctor on there, and the doctor said that people literally called him and was like telling him they knew where his children were and all this stuff.
Yeah, that was Andrew Huff, who was the vice president of Eco Health Alliance, and he actually claimed that they had somebody, that he caught somebody in his caught somebody in his bushes out in the middle of nowhere, and that the person shot at him and he shot back. The person, they were a good ways away from him, ran and then were picked up by a helicopter on his property. Now this is a guy.
That's just straight up a hop right there.
Yeah, well, Andrew Huff, he's one of these whistleblowers that we heard about during, while this was happening, but we never did see for a while, and then they never did really make it to the mainstream. But this guy was second in charge. Y'all probably heard the name Peter Daszak a lot. Mm-hmm. He was the president of Eco Health Alliance, who funded the gain of function research in the Wuhan lab, and they got their funding for it from Anthony Fauci. Well, Andrew Huff was the vice president and the chief scientist of Eco Health Alliance. And he was one of the people trying to blow the whistle, saying that this was a chimeric virus and that it was released intentionally, and that he didn't want to have any part of it. And he was pretty well scrubbed from the internet. But yeah, I've still not heard him on any mainstream news. But anyway, let's get back to. I want to show you all this from. This is one of the new Kennedy documents.
I'm not saying there's enough money to make me believe in QAnon, but if I knew it would piss off the right amount of people, I would be a QAnoner.
Let's see if we can find you that money.
I personally feel like it's a controlled opposition kind of thing, like a misguidance. It's kind of like the old Bugs Bunny cartoons where they just like turn the sign, the arrow,
Mm-hmm.
they go this way. It's like they turn this way. It's like
A lot of people think that flat Earth is a psyop.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I don't know.
it's kind of like a divide and conquer technique where
People believe what they want, but I don't know. I think
well, it's almost like a divisionary tactic
it's like
where
a trap. It's think about all the people they've got tied in with that who are like,
well, I mean, it's almost like, because like the people that are researching flat Earth are also researching stuff that is valid. So if you can get them tied to something that your average person thinks is absolutely bat crap crazy, they're not going to listen to the believable.
Well,
Yeah.
But like if you
I question it myself.
to tie it into the Kennedy assassination, if
We
you
can have a
take
good conversation if you want to.
we're not going to do flat Earth tonight, but to tie it into it, if you had somebody who is a flat earther, they're also somebody who likely believes that the Kennedy assassination was the result of a conspiracy, and so in order to poison that well,
Well, that's a really good term because that's exactly what it does. Kind of,
like Alex Jones used to say, you mentioned him, but it's like a turd in the punch bowl.
Yeah.
It's like no matter how good that punch is, nobody's going to drink about it with that turd in it. Like if you got somebody talking flat Earth, you're probably going to disregard almost everything else they say.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a taboo. It's like taints it.
But this new document here, that was one of the ones that was released a couple days ago. Like I said, they still blocked when they were supposed to be released in 2000. When was it? 2018, I think. It was when Trump was in office. Mike Pompeo actually blocked the release of it. He was the CIA director at the time. He blocked the release of a lot of the Kennedy documents. Trump publicly stated on multiple occasions that he wanted them released, and then he let them talk him into not releasing them, so they delayed it. And they were supposed to come out again Friday, and then the CIA blocked some more of them. They let 11,000 documents out, but they still blocked another like 6,000. But this is a memo to JFK from Arthur Schlesinger Jr. in June 1961, warning that the CIA possessed many of the characteristics of a state within a state. After its most recent review in May 2021, the CIA still claims that publishing the full memo would undermine U.S. national security. U.S. national security. And one of the things that Tucker Carlson pointed out in his piece that he did on Friday night was that everyone involved in this is dead. So they're not protecting people, they're protecting an institution. Why are they protecting this institution? This here, we won't read the whole thing, but we'll look over a little bit of it here. Because it's a kind of a long document, but I do want to show some key parts if I can zoom in enough for y'all I can actually see it.
What was that?
Sound like water.
Oh.
But this thing I think is important right here.
Magic duck that lives in the wall.
It's a wall duck. It just hangs out and eats the mice. It's all cannibalistic and stuff. And late in the night.
They listen to this. They say about the State Department. He says, "State, when it questions CIO operations or initiatives, casts itself in a prissy, sissy negative role. The advocate of the clandestine activities seem tough and realistic. The opponent has to invoke such intangible as the reputation of the United States, world opinion. What do we say in the United Nations? And seem hopelessly idealistic, legalistic, and soft. And this is referring to the State Department. And this is the State Department trying to be, at this time at least, now we know it's not the case now, but this is after World War II, the State Department is trying to do its part and actually negotiate peace and improve America's standing around the world. And the CIA is saying they're prissy and sissy and negative and soft. And he says the result of CIA's initiative is covert political operations has been to create situations which have forced policy on the State Department. This was not the original idea of the CIA. As Alan Dulles wrote in his 47 memorandum to the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Central Intelligence should have nothing to do with policy, yet in the years since, CIA has in effect made policy in many parts of the world. And we know how they did that when, the Korean conflict, the Vietnam War. There's all kinds of reports of them funneling weapons, doing operations in Cambodia and Laos, all around that area. Causing all kinds of trouble all around the world. They were involved in a lot of different conflicts, stirring up rebels in different countries and installing dictators. You can go on and watch confessions of CIA agents where they'll talk about how they went down to like Nicaragua, and in order to piss off the public against the current regime in charge down there, they would catch the trucks that delivered lunches to the schools, and they would put cement in the milk, and they would poison the food. So, and then they would blame it on the people who were in charge. I can't remember the guy's name, but then they would use that to push in the guy that was backed by the West. And the same thing in Iran. They had Mohammad Mossadegh, who was the president over there, and he was a Western allied liberal. And he was a leader of it. He was a democratically elected president. And they actually went in and started machine gunning crowds, and they would throw out leaflets that would say, "Up with Mossadegh, down with Allah," so that the people would turn against their leadership. And then that was when they brought in the Shah and the Western-backed dictatorship there, which ended up being overthrown by the Islamic Revolution in 1978. And now, like in Iran, you've got the regime over there we have that's totally, walled itself off from all outside influence and basically rules Iran with an iron fist because they don't want to let the CIA back in there and, do their whole thing again. But and anyway, the CIA also says, let's go down here just a little bit. This experience suggests that the present system by which the CIA notifies State Department of projected covert operations is inadequate to protect U.S. interests. And they're saying basically that the CIA is going in and causing, through its decisions, it's basically creating policy that state has to bend itself to, and that the country in general has to bend itself to. And Lyndon Baines Johnson, also from Texas, where the Zapata, where the CIA was working around there with the oil stuff. So all kinds of connections for Johnson to Kennedy. And I do want to look at, before we go, I want to look at E. Howard Hunt and the deathbed confession of E. Howard Hunt, who was one of Nixon's plumbers union guys, one of the guys that got caught in the Watergate burglars.
I imagine the wall duck running through with a guy in a gimp suit and a shotgun trying to get him, like on people into the stairs. Quack, quack. He's got the Gilbert Godfrey voice, and he's, "Get back, you son of a bitch!"
And he has the face of Howard the Duck.
Yeah. God, that's a creepy movie, isn't it?
It is.
I will concede that I know the history of the Flat Earth movement, and the Flat Earth movement in its conception called it that sort of as a joke to go back to square one because they simply doubted what the map really was. It's not that they believed in the beginning anyway that it was flat. They said, we don't know what the hell we're on because the globe don't make sense. You're lying about this. So that was the original part of it, but it may have backfired on them for the ones that were being true because that's what it represents now.
No, it's the Flat Earth
Yeah,
Society.
Eric Dubay certainly made sure of that. So a lot of people try to say that he's in the CIA, but I don't know. He seems a little dweeby to be CIA to me.
CIA is a bunch of dweebs.
Yeah.
So maybe Eric Dubay
That's
is.
who's running us out. These nerds are going to freaking kill us. They're like, the whole world's run by nerds.
That's Bill Burr.
He
He kills me, nerds. We're all going to hell because of nerds.
Yeah, some shit. I think it's like the Revenge of the Nerds was like a psyop too, because it makes it like the jocks and Ogre and all these guys are, you know, so mean to all the nerds, and now the nerds have their revenge. Well, I think the nerds are really.
People like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, because high school, the nerds are taken advantage of, and the bullies are the king. But after high school, the bullies don't have any power.
I'm sure that dichotomy is all.
The nerds are in charge now.
The dynamic is completely thrown. High school looks terrifying to me now. It looks like a bunch of people that are just afraid to talk to each other.
Well, these nerds are going to kill us. See Howard Hunt. He worked for the CIA.
Future nerd, save us.
He was not so much of a nerd, but let's listen to his deathbed confession to his son.
How do we know this is real? How do we know he's not a psyop?
It's on audio. We're just gonna have to either believe what he says or not believe it. But he said it.
Cliff's in the CIA. He's spreading propaganda. He Howard Hunt for information. Not 20 seconds. See, using those conspiracy numbers.
11:22.
Same time that they found Bush in Dallas.
The law speaks. It's true.
Stayed in
Get the whack on the soundboard.
during preparations for the big event.
Remember early one.
Their addresses were very subject to change,
Once you get your files.
so that where a fellow like Wallace had been one day, you're not necessarily associated with that same address the following day. In short, it was a very mobile experience. Let me point out at this point that if I had wanted to fictionalize what went on in Miami and elsewhere during the run-up for the big event, I would have done so. But I don't want any unreality to tinge this particular story, or the information, I should say. I was a bench warmer on it, and I had a reputation for honesty. I think it's essential to refocus on what this information that I've been providing you, and you alone, by the way, consists of. What is important in the story is that we've backtracked the chain of command up through the Courtmire and laying the doings at the doorstep of LBJ. He, in my opinion, had an almost maniacal urge to become president. He regarded JFK as he was, in fact, an obstacle to achieving that. He could have waited for JFK to finish out his term and then undoubtedly a second term. So that would have put the LBJ at the head of a long list of people who were waiting.
He said he was a bench warmer on the squad that actually did it. So they called it the big event, and it was planned, and he was in Miami leading up to this time, and he was planning for it. And that was what he left that confession to his son. That's why he said, "I'm telling you and only you," and his son recorded it. But so there's another one saying that LBJ was at the head of it, but LBJ, you know, who knows who he was working for, but was it just for himself? Probably not. So that we could do that on another video. Who did LBJ work for? There's probably a whole lot of information to look through for that. But regardless, it looks like the CIA was definitely used and associated with it, and especially with the information that's come out recently that Tucker got into on his show, we may find more about that in the near future. I hope we do. Let's see, it's 11:45, so I do want to finish the show up. I want to tell you about the Frazier fir in Elizabethton, Tennessee. It's the largest decorated Frazier fir in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
With some shit lights. They need to fix that.
Yeah, well, I don't know why they have those horrible lights on it. But you know, it was really cool. I went to the lighting of the Christmas tree. can't remember if it was 2020. I think it was 2020. But it was pretty awesome because everything was like killed for coronavirus for a long time. And then people started realizing that a lot of it was a scam, and that a lot of it was that the government was just taking over our lives. And people around here said no more. And they went out and lit this Christmas tree, and there was probably 5,000 people down there in that tiny little square around this tree. It was awesome.
10% of them died 2 weeks later.
No, they didn't.
Big dick in the background. Always honor the dick.
I didn't see it, but
Pink
but
in
we
this
do.
picture with the lights appropriate. I still want my pit on the opposite end of town. You know why.
Well, let's see if here we can find here about how it's the largest tree, because this
All
goes.
about equality, baby. The opposite end of town needs an exact pit.
The tree is the largest Frazier fir in the state of Tennessee, and it's the second largest in the nation. It's 78 feet tall, with a spread of 8 feet and 5 inches. Spread of 8 feet and 5 inches, way wider than 8 feet
we
5
can make
inches.
that sucker taller. Than that.
But this is also an old article. But this thing is it is the largest decorated Frazier fir in the world. And like Tim said, though, they need a new set of lights. Apparently, these lights on it were $2,700.
Those lights need to be wrapped around. I know it's easier to go down, but let's not.
So it's the
Let's not-
second biggest top of tree.
In the country, it's the
Where's
biggest
that one at?
Frazier fir in the United States. It's the largest decorated.
Is it Elizabethton?
Yeah.
Yeah. They've always decorated it shitty vertical.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can do so much better.
How's that $2,700 worth of lights? That's what I want.
It probably took that manpower to do it, to get the scaffolding to get to the top
Well,
of
it took
it.
7 people to stand around while you had one guy on a ladder.
Yeah.
I was about to
Pink.
say, I
I
can
told
already
you.
see this whole thing going down. Shoot.
So I'm more of a crater earth fella because I think that leaves room for development. And I never noticed, have you been locking people in here?
It's one of my dogs have been closed in here.
Why are they finger hand high?
Have you met my dogs?
It's a scrag.
Oh yeah, the one's tall enough to do
I
that.
like fur horns.
Relax and smell the rag.
That's right. So back in November 1988, the idea of lighting the Frazier fir was decided. So it's not been doing it for that long. It was in the front yard of the Cowder County UT Extension office, and that used to be.
4-H building.
Yeah, that's what it is now. I think it used to be like a courthouse or something.
I think it's really important to do stuff like that still. And I think it's good that they still do it. I'm glad to hear that it had a large turnout.
Oh yeah, it was huge. I missed it this year.
It's small towns and communities like this in America that's going to help keep the country from just like completely dying.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to. There's nothing wrong with family and tradition, and
And-
I'm glad to hear that a lot of people come out.
We used to mention this on the show a lot, and we kind of have gotten away from it a little bit because we kind of turned towards not wanting to be doom and gloom all the time, I guess. But one of the main things that when we were talking about how the World Economic Forum plan is being engaged and being put in place all around the world, including locally with the smart poles and smart meters, and Tennessee being the smart city, World Economic Forum pilot smart city. We talked about a lot about how the remedy for this is not to go vote for president. That's what your president.
I'm at the black pill stage right now where it's just like,
I have ascended.
Well,
Join me
I'll still vote.
in my cult. I will give you cigarettes.
The remedy of it is Anna said she would join that
Got
cult.
2 people now.
Anna said she would
I
join.
got 2 people that are in on my cult. Free cigs.
Look, I've got these Camel Crush. They can be menthol too if you do this. So
Why would you want one of these?
Sorcery.
Whoa!
now you've got double the
Was it like
reason
a
to
clove in
join.
there or something that you just broke? Is that what happens? Or
It's
what?
got some kind of little menthol ball in it. Yeah, I'm not
Some
sure
ball
what
of
it is.
chemicals to make it healthier for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I've decided now, kids, I'm not a
He's
doctor.
decided he's embracing the cigarette.
I've decided I'm not a doctor, and this is not medical device, and kids don't smoke. But as many government warnings on these things as there are, and this one actually had them. This was from like.
Please tell me you think these don't cause cancer, because now you're coming.
Oh, no.
You're coming onto my side.
I'm
of the
coming even
now.
better because I'm going to say I think they're good for you because
Hell yeah.
because everything that the government has told us about so many other
thought
things
your
has been the
kids
exact opposite. Have been the exact opposite. So that's what you're making me think, government. That's what you're making me think. But look
Why I
at
think reading is evil.
but look about when
Get weighing into my argument.
look about when people stopped smoking in the 90s. What did they do?
Got less sexy.
They started getting fat.
Okay, so they started eating more?
You remember you watch Seinfeld in the 1990s.
Okay.
George Costanza. Think about how big George Costanza is. He was comically obese. He was comically overweight. Yes, he was.
George Costanza was just tubby. I would say the guy that played.
But back then he was comically overweight.
No. The
He's just husky now.
the comical overweight one would be the guy that was in Jurassic Park.
John.
Yeah.
Newman.
Yeah,
Newman would be the comically big one.
But they did gags of George with he'd have his shirt off and have him do around. I mean, look at the Truffle Shuffle kid on Goonies. You know, that was comically overweight. That's most kids. That's like your average kid now looks like Chunk on Goonies.
I don't want to shit on modern kids.
But if you look at photos of people from the beach, you know, take a photo from the beach, people from the beach in 2022 versus a photo of people from the beach in 1972. And you know, this is nothing to get. I'm not what do you call it, fattest or weightest or whatever you want to call it. But if you
body shaming.
I'm not body shaming anybody. But if you go around Walmart now, and if you just happen to look, I just noticed like everybody around me was like 5 times my size, and I was like, how many people I wonder are overweight or obese? And I just started looking around, and it was like almost everybody there was obese, not just overweight, but then there would occasionally be a couple that was thin and, you know, average size, but most groups of people were largely like well overweight, and it wasn't always like that. And I really think a lot of it had to do with, you know, bad nutritional advice.
They just work everybody to death and mess the economy up, so you have to work like 2 new jobs, you have to eat fast food.
Yeah.
Most people don't even have time to go to the gym or eat right, you know, or healthy, or they can't afford to. It's expensive to eat healthy.
Well, and I think a lot of people like stemmed that. Not that cigarettes are good for you. I don't think they are, but I think people stemmed their cravings for food, and people with nervous habits, especially, instead of eating some cookies or eating a donut or having a soda, they would smoke a cigarette instead of that.
You seen the meme that says, "Are you hungry, but you have a minimum wage job? Don't worry about it. Take a hit off your bong. You'll be hungry later."
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the thing I'm saying is it's probably a lot of different factors, but I know I've known a lot of people that smoked for a really long time, and the only people that I've known that had like emphysema and cancer were people who chain smoked. Now, that's not to say that some people don't get it, you know, bad from you know, casual smoking, but I never saw it really.
Different people have different responses.
Yeah, everybody's body's different.
I haven't had a cigarette in a very long time, and if I tried to smoke a cigarette right now, my allergies would flare. It would look like my eyes would turn beet red, and I would suffocate to death because my allergies would kick in so heavy.
Yeah, everybody's body's different, and I definitely am not insinuating that cigarettes are good. All I'm insinuating is that the government lies to you about everything else, so I wouldn't be surprised if they lied to you about
I'm
cigarettes.
French, so I should want to eat cigarettes. Dude, I'm still cracking up at the fact that
everyone should question everything and not be a dodo.
Yeah.
Everyone should realize that it was funny that Pepe Le Pew was the embodiment of what boomers thought French people were.
Anna says she's in, the Tim. Yeah.
So funny to me.
Anna says she's in, Tim. Cigarettes, smiley face, thumbs up.
That's right. We're building the numbers.
That's right.
Cigarette cult, getting strong. We're going to switch it to something.
Maybe we should just
cigarettes the bribe.
Maybe we should just switch this channel and start a cult channel. You think we could get away with that?
You could try.
I'll leave us alone.
You'd still have to leave YouTube though.
You have to sacrifice.
No, that's what I'm saying. I wonder if YouTube would let us. Yeah.
I don't know if YouTube would let you do. Like, once people start getting into, like,
everything's inverted
followers sort of stuff, they have a tendency to start kicking people off. Like, that's the reason why they kicked Stefan Molyneux off, was because of his whole defooing video, which was D-Family of Origin, which is
haters, that's why.
actually what a cult actually does.
They've never had any power except for sitting on YouTube and being like, I don't like you. I'm going to take your post down because it doesn't go with the agenda.
Well, I let it affect me on an emotional level, so...
Well, listen, y'all.
Cigarettes.
I was going to tell you a little bit more about that tree, but basically they started it up in 1988, and it was Major Folsom was commissioned. He was the only commissioned officer from Carter County in the Confederate Army, and he was well respected in Elizabethton. He was the first Sunday school superintendent of the Southern Methodist Church, and he helped to erect the building on Second Street, which is the St. Thomas Episcopal Church down there near Food City. And he lived and worked in a town that was predominantly Union, and after the war he continued to practice law and have good standing.
Tastes like floor spice and clove now.
So Folsom owned that property right there, and he founded the Folsom Printing Company. And
So
anyway,
Folsom Printing.
It was so
Blue.
close. Yeah, Folsom Printing Blues. I was raised in Carter County. And that's the end of it. I'm just sad.
but they gave the descendants of him, Murray Folsom and his wife, they deeded the property to Carter County in '76, and had the provision that the house could not be sold or moved to another location. And they grew that Frazier fir on there, and I don't know when when is this article from? 2019. So it just tells when they were going to light it on them. And now the Downtown Business Association, a new Main Street organization, run the thing down there. They put up all the Christmas decorations, and if you go downtown Elizabethton, it's very festive. They got a nice light set up, and got a big Christmas tree up on the hill on city property where those famous 3 crosses are that didn't get taken down by the Freedom from Religion organization because
They tried to take down the wrong ones. Mostly.
yeah, they tried to take down the wrong ones, and because it was the government provided the land, but citizens of the county actually donated their services and put the things up there as part of like a charity event to put the crosses up. It was not placed up there by the government. The government allowed them to do it, and I mean, the popular sentiment was so against taking those crosses down that they basically just gave up on the whole thing because. And they made the argument that it was,
Were people complaining about them?
yeah, one person got the Freedom
Charities.
from Religion organization in.
If you don't like it, then
Yeah, it was a whole fiasco. They tried to sue to have them taken down, and then it turned out they had the wrong land, and that this land wasn't owned by the city. And the backlash against it, they ultimately ended up with way more crosses because people were like, "You're not taking our crosses. I'm going to put okay, fine, take our cross." They thought people would be up in arms about it, but people would put up things that said "Save our crosses." But the main thing people did was put up 3 crosses on their own land all over the place. So
people have been here 4, 5, 6, 7 generations,
Yeah.
and then somebody just wants to move here all of a sudden and start whining about
Well,
it.
they didn't want to move here.
No?
yeah, they put them in the 50s.
They were from like Portland or somewhere. The people that were complaining about it, they'd found a video on the internet,
Yep.
and that's the only reason they were aware of it.
Yep, there's a guy we went to school with had taken a video by a drone of him, and
Hey Ryan, I hope you've looked up fair use though.
well, anyway, they
Whatever you can do to impede an asshole, I guess. I don't blame
Yeah.
them for doing it.
If it's not on like. If it's not on like a state park or anything, I don't see why they can even say anything about it.
It was
If it's on
kinda-
property. They can't say nothing.
Well, it was because it was on city property, but at the same time, it's like they're saying it's a First Amendment issue because they're saying separation of church and state, but ultimately it comes down to freedom of expression. The citizens of the town decided to express themselves on public property in that way.
It's very reactionary.
Yeah, so
Plus, when this happened, this was
It's a boss move.
If you watch the
It's a very
dominoes-
dominant move, like a very
Well-
pre-thought out, dominant, and
no, I wouldn't really call it thought out. It's reactionary. What led to this was Elizabethton got on the map because we had I think it was a 4th of July anti-protest where the BLM groups got in the park and had their little thing. And of course, Elizabethton's never seen anything like that before, so they handled it completely incorrectly.
yeah, it was.
And there was a video of a woman that was screaming some, not the worst, but still some pretty awful stuff that got her fired from her job at the bank. That made her TikTok famous. That then got a lot of other social justice warriors that were on the internet to notice Elizabeth, and they can't just leave things be. So they tried to take some crosses down. So there you go.
Yeah.
Anna says she almost chain smoked since 1976. Her lungs are at 98%. The doc thought she was lying about smoking. She says that was weed and cigarettes since 76. Been weed free for 2 years. She's afraid of fentanyl. Says she sounds like Sam Elliott with a Chicago accent. So that's good enough for me, Anna.
I'll have that good sarsaparilla, please.
No, Anna is cool. I've talked to Anna. We've emailed a bit over the course of the show. Anna's super cool, and
knows what's up.
oh yeah, she does for sure. It's nice to have her with us and in the chat. Usually she watches and then comments on the videos later or maybe emails, but it's cool to have you in the chat. So glad you're here. Spill, so glad to have you, and so glad to have you with us too, Sean, and whoever else is out there. We appreciate you joining us. We're
We
going
gotta
to
get
get
a
back.
Wilbur on. That's
Yeah, Wilbur. Yeah, we have Toxic Teas on there.
They
Yep.
killed.
Well, I go over to a thing and do a little Iron Mountain Hour segment, just looking at their establishment.
That'd be
Give them
cool.
some free attention.
It's pretty
That'd be
big,
cool.
like,
Nice, Bill.
they got up there. What's it?
Yeah, they do a little bit of everything. T-shirts, moonshine. Music.
Some good, smooth moonshine.
That's right. Mellow moon.
I'm glitching like the Matrix. It looks like I'm rocking like a mental patient. Look.
It is good too.
All right, y'all. We'll see you Wednesday. We're going to get into some news and current events. We still got a lot as usual. And look how glitchy we are. Maybe we'll... All right, y'all.
It's probably going to process normally on the recorded version. I'm just going to look like an even bigger idiot.
All right. See you Wednesday night. Thanks, Aaron, for joining us.
Oh yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Appreciate you guys.
Next week, Flat Earth.
All right. See ya.